They thought I wouldn't notice. They thought I was too old, too slow, too softened by time to tell the difference between soup and sedation. The taste was off. Not bitter, not quite. Just wrong. It sat on my tongue like chalk and metal, too smooth, too still. I stirred the bowl again, pretending not to notice my daughter's glance. Jean watched me too closely these days. Her fork idle, her mouth pressed in that thin line she'd inherited from me, though she'd never admit it. "Eat before it gets cold, Mom," she said, smiling the way people do when they're lying. That sweet coating kind of smile. I didn't reply. I just dipped the spoon again and brought it halfway to my mouth, then lowered it. "You all right?" she asked. "I'm old, not deaf," I said. "And yes, I'm fine." Across the table, her husband Doug cleared his throat. "You've seemed tired lately, Elsie. Maybe you should let us handle more. The bills, the house stuff. It's a lot." They'd moved in 3 months ago to help. That's what Jean had called it, standing in this very kitchen with her purse still on her shoulder, her voice all concern. "After the stroke, it's just not safe for you to be alone." I had one stroke. Minor. I recovered. Still cooked, still gardened, still remembered my own damn name. But they stayed, and slowly the house, my house, changed. My yellow curtains were gone, my old teapot replaced by something sleek and soulless. My bedroom door now stayed open. "So we can hear you at night." Tonight something shifted. Something crossed a line. I set the spoon down carefully and looked up. "Tell me, Jean, what exactly did the doctor say at your last visit?" She blinked. "What do you mean?" "You said you spoke to someone about medication. For me." "Oh, Mom, don't be dramatic. Tell me." She sighed, looked at Doug. He stayed silent. "He said maybe something to help you sleep. You've been restless." "I've never had trouble sleeping." "Well, you wander at night. You left the kettle on twice last week." "I turned it off before it boiled." Her eyes narrowed. "See? This is exactly what I mean. You forget things and then deny them. It's not safe." Not safe. The phrase rang in my head like an accusation. Not safe. That's what they say when they want to take away your keys, your money, your name. I stood. "I'm not hungry." Jean stood too. "Don't be stubborn, please. It's just soup. I made it myself." Exactly. That night, after they went to bed, I sat in the kitchen with the light off and the fridge humming like a lullaby. I poured the rest of the soup into a measuring cup and took it out to the shed, where the dog's bowl sat empty. We'd buried that dog 2 years ago. I hadn't had the heart to throw the bowl away. The liquid pooled in the bowl, catching the moonlight just enough to glint. I left it there. In the morning, it was untouched. Not even a fly on it. The raccoons that usually made a mess of our yard hadn't come near. That afternoon, I heard them talking in the hallway. I hadn't meant to eavesdrop. I was looking for my sweater. But when I heard my name, I froze. "She's slipping," Jean said. "You saw her last night. Paranoid, refusing to eat." "I don't want her to hurt herself." "She's still got control over the accounts," Doug replied. "We can't move on the guardianship unless we prove she's impaired." "I know, I'm working on it." Working on it, as if I were a task to be managed, a glitch to be resolved. I backed away, careful not to creak the floorboard near the laundry room. I sat on the edge of my bed, sweater forgotten, heart pounding not from fear, but from clarity. I was not losing my mind. I was being erased. And tonight, at dinner, I knew what I'd do. The pills sat in my pocket all morning, wrapped in a bit of Kleenex like a secret. I'd fished them out of the trash, the ones Jean thought she'd hidden at the bottom of the kitchen bin, beneath coffee grounds, and a used paper towel. A half-crushed blister pack with 2 missing and 6 left. Zolpidem. 10 mg prescription label long torn off. But I could still read enough. Not vitamins, not supplements. Sleeping pills, strong ones. And they weren't prescribed to me. That morning, Jean moved through the house with a strange brightness, too chipper for someone who'd claimed I'd nearly left the kettle on again last night. I hadn't even boiled water yesterday. She made eggs. Burnt toast. Said she'd make soup again tonight, that broth you like. I never liked that broth, I said. That's your favorite, not mine. She didn't even flinch. You sure? You used to ask for it all the time. No, I said. You used to tell me I liked it. That's not the same. Doug sat in the living room pretending to read a newspaper. He hadn't turned the page in 20 minutes. I saw his eyes dart up every time I moved. Watching me, like I might wander off into traffic or start chewing the curtains. At lunch, I made my own food, peanut butter on crackers. They didn't like that. Jean said I was neglecting protein. I said she was neglecting my boundaries. She laughed, too tight. Oh, Mom, always with the sharp tongue. At 3, I checked my bank account online. I'd hidden the password in my cookbook, tucked between the pages of an old apple pie recipe I hadn't made since before my husband died. 3 withdrawals I didn't recognize. 1 to a medical consultant service in Atlanta. 1 to a courier company. 1 labeled form filing. Guardianship services. I knew it before I Googled. I knew it in my gut. Someone had paid to start the process of declaring me unfit. My hands shook, but not from weakness. From rage. Not fiery rage. Colder than that. Like something old and heavy shifting inside me after too many years of swallowing every slight with a smile. That evening, I dressed carefully. Not like I used to. No pearls, no blouses. Just jeans, a thick sweater, sturdy shoes. I wanted to feel the ground under me. Doug sat at the head of the table. Jean brought out the soup. Creamy, pale, no herbs. My bowl had a small chip in the rim. Doug's didn't. Easy to tell them apart. I added a little something to help you sleep tonight, Jean said softly, as if that were normal. You've been so restless? Doug didn't touch his. He waited for me to lift my spoon. Instead, I stood, carried the bowl to the sink, poured it out slowly, theatrically, like I was watering the garden. Oops, I said. Clumsy me. Doug stood, face tight. What are you doing? Nothing, I said. Just listening to myself for once. Jean's voice rose, shrill. Mom, that was extremely rude. I made that for you. And I made you, I said, turning to face her. So I guess we're even. I washed the bowl, dried it, put it back in the cabinet, sat back down and took a cracker from my pocket. Chewed slowly. Doug pushed his chair back. This isn't working. Not for you, I said. That night I locked my bedroom door. First time in 50 years. I propped a chair under the handle, not because I thought they'd come in, but because I wanted to hear it if they tried. Under my pillow, the blister pack, the 3 printouts from the bank, and a note I wrote in pen on the back of an old receipt. If anything happens to me, show this to the police. Next morning, I called the bank. Said I wanted to revoke all third-party authorizations. The voice on the line was polite, concerned. Are you sure, ma'am? We show that your daughter has been helping manage. She is not authorized to manage anything, not anymore. Silence. Then a click of keys. It's done. Anything else I can assist you with? Yes, I said. Do you know a good lawyer? The lawyer's name was Marla Kingston, a former prosecutor turned estate specialist. recommended by the woman at the bank who said, in a careful tone, "My own mother used her. She's very thorough." I liked that word. Thorough. Marla's office was in a red brick building across from the courthouse. No frills, no fake plants, just a desk, a coffee machine, and a wall of degrees that said, "I don't care if you like me. I'm here to protect you." "Tell me everything," she said, as I sat across from her, gripping my tote bag like a shield. I did. Every detail. The soup, the tone of voice, the withdrawals, the sleeping pills. Jean's new habit of translating what I said to the doctor, as if my words weren't clear enough. Marla didn't interrupt, just took notes with a blue pen that clicked every few seconds. When I finished, she leaned back. "Well, Mrs. Mason," she said, "I'll be frank. This is more common than you'd believe, but most people don't notice until it's too late. You did. That gives us time." "Time for what?" "To fix it." She slid a form across the desk. "Durable power of attorney revocation." "You signed this last fall," she said, pointing to a signature that looked shakier than I remembered. "Probably under pressure. This revokes it. Once we file this, your daughter loses legal control over your accounts, medical decisions, and property. Permanently." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake at all this time. Next came the estate documents, the house, the investments. "You need to decide," Marla said, "where your assets go if anything happens, and who makes decisions if you ever truly can't." I didn't hesitate. My granddaughter, Hazel, Jean's daughter, 26, the only one who ever visited me just to talk. No requests, no hints, just coffee, shared books, and laughter. "She's young," Marla noted. "She's loyal," I said. "And she listens." We drew up the trust, split the accounts, set up alerts for any new financial activity. She showed me how to monitor my assets in real time. "You're safer now," Marla said, standing as I gathered my things. "But be prepared. Once they realize what's happened, they'll come hard. I'm counting on it." Back home, the kitchen smelled like bleach, too clean. Jean had sanitized everything, she said, her voice brittle. Doug was watching a home renovation show, pretending not to listen. "You went out today," Jean said. "Where?" "Lawyer," I replied. That got her attention. She dropped the sponge. "Why?" "I'm updating my documents." Her face twitched. "You could have asked me. I handle all your papers." "Not anymore." She looked at Doug. He stood slowly. "What are you saying, Elsie?" "I'm saying," I said calmly, "I've taken back what's mine. You don't speak for me. You don't pay for me. And you sure as hell don't drug me." Doug raised his voice. "That's a serious accusation." "I have the pills," I said, "and the pharmacy report. They weren't prescribed to me or either of you. That's a felony." Silence. Jean opened her mouth, then closed it again. "I want you out of my house by the weekend," I said. "This isn't a discussion." "Mom," Jean started, her voice trembling now. "We only wanted what was best. You've been struggling." "No," I said. "I've been surviving, despite you." That night, I slept with the door open. Not because I trusted them, but because I didn't need to be afraid. In the morning, Hazel called. Her voice, always light, carried a new seriousness. "Grandma, did something happen? Mom's been blowing up my phone. Something about legal betrayal." I told her everything. There was a long pause. Then, "Do you want me to come over?" "Yes," I said. "Bring an empty suitcase." Hazel arrived just after noon, stepping out of her little hatchback with a determined look and a suitcase that rolled behind her like punctuation. She'd always moved with a quiet confidence. Never rushed, never flustered. At 26, she was taller than I remembered, or maybe just standing taller. She hugged me without words. I hadn't realized how badly I needed that until it happened. Inside, she glanced around, nostrils flaring slightly. "It smells like bleach." "They've been cleaning," I said, "or trying to wash away something." Doug was gone, at a business lunch, which meant hiding. Jean was upstairs. The silence between us buzzed with tension. Hazel set her suitcase by the door. "I'm staying tonight." I nodded. "You'll sleep in your old room. Nothing's changed in there." "Well," she said with a small smile, "everything else has." We sat in the living room. I showed her the papers from Marla, the revocation forms, the trust, the list of assets now locked behind legal glass. Hazel read silently, her brow furrowed. "I had no idea it was this bad," she finally said. "Because you see what they let you see. Still." "I should have noticed." "No," I said firmly. "You saw me. That's more than most." Footsteps on the stairs. Jean entered, holding a laundry basket like a shield. "Oh," she said, seeing Hazel. "You're here." Hazel stood. "Yes, I am." Jean's mouth thinned. "I assume she's told you everything." Hazel didn't answer, didn't look away. Jean set the basket down and folded her arms. "This is all a huge misunderstanding. Your grandmother's been paranoid lately, and now she's got some lawyer filling her head with fear." "Mom?" Hazel said quietly. "You tried to drug her." Jean's voice jumped an octave. "That's not. We just wanted her to sleep. She's been so restless." "She's not a child," Hazel snapped. "She gets to decide what goes in her body. You think you know everything now." Jean's face flushed. "You think just because you read a few legal documents." "She asked for my help, so I'm here." They stared at each other. The tension between mother and daughter hung thick in the air. I stayed seated, hands folded in my lap. It wasn't my battle anymore. Not this part. Jean finally turned to me. "Is this really what you want, Mom? To make enemies out of your own family?" "No," I said softly. "I just want my family to stop making an enemy out of me." She didn't reply, just grabbed her basket and marched back upstairs. Hazel sat beside me again. "She's panicking." "She should be." We spent the afternoon sorting papers. I showed her where everything was: the house deed, the savings accounts, the insurance. "If anything happens to me," I said, "you'll have everything you need." Hazel frowned. "Don't say that." "I have to, because people like your mother count on me not saying it." That evening, Doug returned. He didn't speak to me, just glanced at Hazel, then stomped upstairs. 10 minutes later, the door slammed. Jean followed him out, suitcase in hand. By 8 p.m., the house was quiet. Hazel made tea. We drank it in silence, the kind that's warm, not awkward. Before bed, she looked at me and asked, "What now?" I smiled. Now I sleep, without wondering what's in the soup. At 7:14 the next morning, the doorbell rang like an alarm. Hazel was still asleep, curled on the old pullout in the den, wrapped in my knitted blanket from the 70s. I was already dressed, the habit of age and wariness, and opened the door without hesitation. Jean stood there, alone. No suitcase, no smile. She pushed past me into the foyer. "We need to talk." I didn't move. "We said enough yesterday." "Not like this." She turned, hands clenched, and I noticed for the first time how tired she looked. Not the exhaustion of someone overworked, but of someone losing control. "I know I made mistakes," she said. But I'm still your daughter. You're not thinking clearly. I folded my arms. Don't start with that. Her mouth twitched. It's just, since Dad died, you've become stubborn, isolated. You don't know how to ask for help. I asked for help, I said. You offered control. That's not fair. No, I said, stepping forward. What's not fair is trying to turn me into a silent figure in my own life, changing my medication, signing papers for me, sneaking into my accounts. She flushed. We didn't sneak. You used my grief like a door left ajar. Her voice cracked. It was never about money. I raised an eyebrow. Wasn't it? You initiated guardianship paperwork. You withdrew funds without asking. You lied to doctors. To me. I was scared. So was I. Hazel appeared in the hallway, still sleepy, but sharp-eyed. Everything okay? Jean turned toward her, then away. I just needed to talk to her alone. She's not alone anymore, Hazel said. That landed like a slap. Jean looked back at me, eyes glassy. What happens now? You going to cut me out completely? Pretend I don't exist? I don't have to pretend, I said. You did that for me already. The silence that followed was long and jagged. I'll contest the trust, Jean said suddenly, voice tightening. You think Hazel's going to walk away with everything, but it's not that simple. Hazel stepped forward. You'll go to court? If I have to. Then be prepared, Hazel said, because we have recordings, bank statements, witnesses. Jean's face turned white, then red. You're turning her against me. She turned back to me, I said. That's different. Jean looked between us, jaw clenched. You've always preferred her. No, I said. I just stopped pretending you deserved more. She didn't slam the door when she left. She didn't cry. She walked away like someone crossing a line they'd never return from. When the house was quiet again, Hazel made oatmeal. We ate in silence, not because there was nothing to say, but because what had been said couldn't be unsaid. After breakfast, I brought down a dusty box from the attic, labeled Legal. Derek. My father? Hazel asked. I nodded. Everything we owned, we earned together. But I signed too much of it away, trusting your mother to manage it after he passed. I won't make that mistake again. Inside the box were old tax returns, business contracts, handwritten loan agreements from decades ago. We sorted them slowly, tossing what didn't matter, scanning what did. Around noon, Hazel looked up from a folder. Did you know they tried to sell the shed? I blinked. What? She held up a printed email, a message from Doug to a local contractor, asking for a quote to demolish the backyard shed and build a guest unit. They were going to move someone in, or sell it separately as a rental. Depends who you ask. My hands curled into fists. That shed was my husband's. He built it with his own hands, beam by beam. It still smelled like cedar and sweat and old paint. They wanted to erase him too, I whispered. Hazel touched my hand. Not while I'm here. That afternoon, I went out to the shed. The air inside still held a scent I couldn't name. Old tools, dry wood, rust, and something else. Memory, maybe. My late husband Derek had built this place when Jean was still in diapers. He'd called it his fortress of function, and I used to tease him about that. It's a glorified closet, I'd said. And yet, he grinned, it's the only closet I can lock from the inside. His tools were still lined up on the pegboard. Dusty, but in order. The floor creaked beneath my steps, familiar, forgiving. I sat on the little stool by the workbench and let the silence soak through me. That shed had been here for 45 years. Doug wanted to bulldoze it for rental income. I pressed my palm against the wall. "Not while I'm alive," I said aloud. Then I added, "And not after either." Back in the house, Hazel had pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. "I've made a list of everything they've touched. Bank activity, legal filings, that email about the shed, even messages to doctors. If we need to go to court—" "We won't," I said. She looked up, startled. "Because we'll be ready long before they ever make it that far." Hazel nodded slowly. "So what now?" "Now," I said, "we move everything out of reach." First, we went to the bank, in person. I sat down with the branch manager, a new man named Tyler, who wore glasses and looked like he hadn't slept in a week. "I want everything secured," I said. "No phone authorizations, no third-party access. I want to know every time a penny moves." He pulled up my profile and raised an eyebrow. "Looks like a lot of recent activity from a Gene H. Mason?" "Not anymore," I said. He clicked a few keys. "We can freeze all shared activity until new documentation is uploaded. Shouldn't take more than an hour." Next came the safe deposit box. My husband's war medals, the deed to the house, my mother's wedding ring. Hazel and I opened the box together, inventoried everything, and added a sealed envelope labeled, "If something happens to me." Hazel looked at it. "Want me to read it?" "No," I said. "But keep the key." The lawyer called just after we got home. Marla's voice was calm, but clipped. "Your daughter called my office today." "Of course she did. She wants to schedule a meeting, says she's concerned about your well-being. She's concerned her meal ticket's gone dry." Marla didn't disagree. "Do you want me to respond?" "Yes," I said. "Tell her any future contact goes through you, and that if she sets foot on my property again without my consent, I'll file a restraining order." Another pause. "Understood. You're holding firm." "I'm tired of being polite." That night, Hazel lit a fire in the old hearth. We didn't talk about Gene or Doug. We talked about Hazel's job, how she hated it but needed the insurance, how her roommate was moving out, how she missed baking but never had the time. "I'll teach you," I said. "Again." She smiled. "Like when I was 10? "Exactly like that." The fire popped, and I looked around my living room, at the mismatched furniture, the faded rug, the family photos. And for the first time in months, it felt like my house again. Not a prison, not a battlefield. A home. Hazel curled up in the chair with a blanket and a book. I sat by the window with a cup of tea, watching the streetlights flicker on. Freedom wasn't loud. It was quiet like this, warm like this, and it tasted like tea without fear. I didn't sleep much that night, not from fear that had passed, but from something else. A kind of readiness. Like my body, even at 78, knew there was still work to do. At 5:12 a.m., I got up, dressed, and stepped out onto the porch. The September air was sharp, but not cruel. I stood there with my hands in the pockets of my cardigan, staring at the street I'd lived on for 52 years. The mailboxes hadn't changed. The trees hadn't changed. Only I had. And even that, I thought, wasn't quite true. I hadn't changed. I'd returned. Back in the kitchen, Hazel was already making coffee. She didn't ask why I was awake. She just poured 2 mugs and handed me one. "You were always like this," she said. "Up before the sun. I used to think you were part witch." I smiled. "Only the part that survived the fire." We sat at the table, quiet, drinking. She scrolled her phone. I stared out the window at nothing. Then Hazel spoke, without looking up. She's coming today. I didn't need to ask who. Jean. She texted me last night, Hazel continued. Said she needs to talk calmly, face to face. I didn't reply. She won't stop, I said. Not until I make her. Hazel looked at me then. You already did. No, not yet. Before noon, the doorbell rang. This time I didn't open it right away. I stood on the other side for a moment, hand on the knob, letting the silence speak first. Then I opened it. Jean stood there, clutching a binder. Her expression was rehearsed. Firm, but soft. Crisis face. She used it on neighbors, teachers, funeral directors. Mom, she said, please. I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, scanning the room like a stranger entering a museum. Full of things she once owned, now roped off. Hazel sat in the corner, arms crossed. Jean took the chair across from me, laid the binder on the table. I just want to clarify a few things, she began. You want something back? I corrected. No, she shook her head. I want to fix what's been misunderstood. There's been no misunderstanding. Then there's been a mistake. There has, I said. You thought I was alone. She flinched. Mom, we were trying to help. You were trying to handle. There's a difference. Doug's voice echoed in my head from weeks ago. We can't move on the guardianship unless we prove she's impaired. They were building a case. Jean opened the binder. Documents, printed emails, doctor's notes. I didn't look. I've spoken with a different attorney, she said. They believe there's still time to resolve this without court. You're too late. She looked up. Why are you doing this? Because I finally realized, I said, that letting you stay was a slow death. You were killing me by degrees. Her eyes narrowed. That's cruel. No, I said. Cruel is drugging someone so they forget what day it is. Cruel is emptying bank accounts behind their back. Cruel is calling love what you actually mean as ownership. Hazel stood. That's enough. Jean turned to her. This is between me and my mother. No, Hazel said. You made it everyone's business when you decided to turn this house into a cage. I raised you, Jean snapped. I paid for everything. And yet you're the one acting like a child. Silence fell, thick and full. Jean finally stood, slowly, gathering her binder. You'll regret this, she said. I already regretted not doing it sooner. She walked to the door, opened it, then turned back. You've replaced me with her. No, I said. I replaced fear with truth. It just happens to look like her. When the door closed behind her, Hazel sat down hard. Jesus, she whispered. That was necessary, I finished. We didn't speak for a long while, but when we did, we laughed. Not because it was funny, because we were free. By the time evening came, it felt like something had shifted in the walls. The house was still the same. Chipped tiles in the bathroom, the loose board near the back door, the humming fridge that should have been replaced 10 years ago. But it felt mine again. Not like a place I was being allowed to stay in. Not like a bed someone else was waiting to take. I was here. Still here. And I wasn't going anywhere. Hazel was in the kitchen, slicing apples. I was thinking pie, she said casually, like this was just a normal Tuesday. Real crust or cheaters? She grinned. Real. I remember your trick with the vinegar. I sat down at the table, folding laundry while she worked. This was what life was supposed to be. Not dramatic, not loud, but safe. Honest. We were halfway through peeling when the phone rang. I checked the caller ID. Unknown number. I picked up anyway. Old habits. Mrs. Mason? The voice asked. Yes. This is Officer Patel from the County Sheriff's Department. We received a welfare call from a Ms. Jean Mason. She expressed concern that you might be in distress or being influenced by someone with financial interests in your estate. I blinked. Excuse me? She requested we perform a wellness check, standard protocol. Are you all right? I looked at Hazel, who had frozen mid-slice. I'm fine, I said. Calm, clear. In fact, I've never been more in control of my own life than I am right now. There was a pause. Would you mind if we sent someone just to verify? Send whoever you like. I'll have cookies ready. I hung up. Hazel exhaled. She called the cops on you? Of course she did. When you lose control, you reach for power. An hour later, there was a knock on the door. 2 deputies, young, polite, cautious. Just checking in, said the taller one. Mind if we ask a few questions? Only if you let me finish this crust while we talk. They sat at the table while I worked. Hazel brought out iced tea. We talked. I told them about the guardianship attempt, the banking documents, the sleeping pills. They took notes. Nodded a lot. Said it wasn't the first time they'd seen something like this, only that most people didn't fight back so neatly. She's going to keep pushing, I said. She won't stop until she's embarrassed or shut down. Or both, Hazel added. One deputy smiled. Well, Mrs. Mason, you seem entirely capable of managing your affairs. If you ever need to make a report, you know where we are. They left with half a pie in foil and my full respect. After they were gone, Hazel and I sat on the porch, the night warm and breezy. The stars looked closer somehow. You think she'll come back again? Hazel asked. She'll try. What if she drags it to court? I sipped my tea. Let her. The last thing she wants is everything aired in public. You think Doug wants to explain where he got the pills? Hazel smirked. I do now. We watched the street for a long time. Then Hazel spoke, voice softer. You scared me, you know. Back when I saw you last Christmas, you looked so small. I felt small. But now? I looked at her. Now, I said, I feel like I'm finally standing at my full height. The letter came 3 days later. Not an email, not a text. A real letter. Thick cream paper, gold letterhead, and an envelope that smelled faintly of Jean's perfume. She'd always liked dramatic touches. Even cruelty, with her, came dressed up like good taste. Hazel found it in the mailbox and handed it to me without a word. I didn't open it right away. Just turned it over, ran my thumb along the seal. We were sitting on the back porch. The garden was still hanging on. The marigold stubborn, the basil half wilted but breathing. Fall was coming, but not yet. Finally, I opened it. The letter was short. Mother, I have tried to speak with you reasonably. You have chosen to respond with hostility, division, and deception. If you persist in excluding your immediate family, including Doug and me, from your financial decisions, we will be forced to explore legal remedies. You are not well. And Hazel, while well-meaning, is not a licensed medical professional. This isn't what Dad would have wanted. You need help. We're willing to give it. But we won't stand by while you're manipulated. Jean. I folded the letter slowly, then set it on the table between us. Hazel didn't touch it. She didn't need to. Well, she said, that sounds like a woman trying very hard not to sound desperate. I nodded. She's still trying to scare me. She should be scared. She is. That's why she mentioned your grandfather. That was the first emotional card she ever learned to play. Hazel shook her head. You know, I used to wonder how she turned out like this, but now I think she was always this way. She just hid it better. I didn't answer. I was looking at the basil. The leaves were curling at the edges, still alive but too long without pruning. That afternoon, we drove to Marla's office again. Hazel insisted on coming. She carried the folder. I carried the letter. I want to make it official, I told Marla. No contact, no more warnings, no more surprises. I want her legally barred from my property. I want it in writing. I want it enforceable. Marla nodded. It's your right, and at this point it's smart. She drafted the paperwork. A formal no-contact letter, a second copy addressed to Doug, a third just in case. They'll test this, she said. Maybe not today, maybe not next week, but eventually. I'm not waiting to be tested anymore, I said. We left her office with the weight of certainty. Not relief, not yet, but solidity. Like putting bricks under your feet after months of walking on mud. That night, Hazel and I cooked together. Not just pie, real food. Roast chicken, squash, steamed beans. I hadn't cooked a full dinner in years. At the table, she looked at me differently. Not as a fragile woman. Not as a problem to solve. But as someone standing tall beside her. You know, she said, they're going to hate me forever. No, I said, slicing into the chicken. They're going to blame you forever. That's different. And it's not your job to carry it. She was quiet a moment. Are you afraid it'll go to court? I'm more afraid of not living like I belong to myself. Hazel nodded. Then we're doing the right thing. Even if it costs us. Especially if it costs us. We finished dinner slowly. No TV, no noise. Just two women who'd walked through fire and come out without begging for someone else's permission. Later, I found the letter still sitting on the porch table. The wind had nudged it to the edge. I picked it up, held it over the kitchen sink, lit a match. The paper burned fast. Easy, like the lie it carried couldn't wait to be gone. The next morning, I stood in front of the mirror and really looked at myself. Not for makeup, not for approval, not to check if I looked presentable, just to see. There were lines I didn't recognize. Not because they were new, but because I'd stopped paying attention. I'd stopped being someone who got to have a face, a voice, a presence. For so long, I'd been just a body to manage, a liability to smooth over. Now, I looked tired, but solid, like someone who'd finally stopped apologizing for breathing. I pulled open the drawer in the hall, the one Jean used to call the junk drawer, and threatened to organize properly every other week. In it were old envelopes, takeout menus, a tiny screwdriver, a folded photo of Derek and me from 1969, and one pair of keys. The spare set to Doug's truck. He'd left them by accident weeks ago, during one of his dramatic door-slamming exits. I'd kept them out of habit. Today, I held them up to the light. Hazel, I called. You up for a ride? She appeared in the doorway, toothbrush still in hand. Sure. Where to? Somewhere I should have gone a long time ago. We drove in silence, past the courthouse, past the community center, all the way to the edge of town, the place where Doug's company kept their project trailers and tools. I parked across the street, rolled down the window, and handed Hazel the keys. Glove box, I said. Let's see if he's been storing anything. She frowned, but understood. Doug's habit of stashing documents, receipts, and business cards in every flat surface was legendary, and often careless. Hazel returned 5 minutes later, holding a brown folder with no label. Inside, estimates, emails, contractor names, and, most importantly, a rough property survey. He was planning to split the backyard, she said. Build a second unit and rent it, without your name on any of it. I exhaled. That's what I thought. Back at home, I scanned the entire folder into a locked cloud drive, made 2 backups, printed a full copy, and added it to the sealed envelope already waiting in the safe. By noon, Hazel had emailed it all to Marla, who called within the hour. This proves intent, she said. Not just manipulation, fraud. They were using your property for profit, assuming you wouldn't be alert enough to notice. Can we stop them? I asked. You already did. But we can make it permanent. She advised us to file a protective claim with the county property office, a legal block. Any attempt to alter the deed or permit construction would trigger a notification, not just to me, but to my attorney. It wouldn't prevent drama, but it would give me control. We filed the claim the same day. Afterward, Hazel and I stopped at a little diner on the edge of town, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a jukebox that hadn't worked since Reagan was in office. We sat by the window and ordered pancakes, even though it was 3 p.m. You know, Hazel said, drizzling syrup, I used to be scared of all this, of the drama, of the fighting. And now? She looked at me. Now I see what letting people walk over you does. It doesn't protect peace. It just delays the explosion. I nodded. Silence can be a slow kind of violence. We clinked our mugs like glasses and ate without guilt. Later that evening, I walked out to the shed again. This time, I brought a trash bag. Inside were the last of Doug's tools. The measuring tape, the extra gloves, the notebook he used for project notes. I carried it all to the curb. Trash day was tomorrow. Let the truck take it. Let it all go. The notary arrived at 10:03 a.m. sharp. A small woman in a gray suit, hair pinned back in a no-nonsense bun. She introduced herself simply as Ms. Riley and set her leather portfolio down on the kitchen table like she'd done this 1,000 times. And I believed she had? Hazel poured coffee. I offered a slice of last night's pie. Ms. Riley declined both. I understand you're updating your estate documents, she said, clicking open a pen. Do you have identification? I handed her my license. She checked it, nodded. These documents, she said, sliding papers across the table, will confirm that your residence, accounts, and personal assets are now held in a private trust under your granddaughter's stewardship, with all control remaining with you while you are of sound mind, which I have no doubt you are. Do you understand what that means? I do. And you consent freely? Absolutely. I signed, page after page. Then came the final one, the amendment to my will. I didn't hesitate. Hazel watched, silent, solemn. Ms. Riley notarized each page, packed her folder, and stood to leave. I'll file these with the county today, she said. You'll get confirmation by mail. Your family will receive none. When she was gone, Hazel sat back, exhaled deeply, and whispered, It's real now. It was always real, I said. Now it's just recorded. We sat in silence for a while, letting it settle. The quiet weight of decisions made, of things locked into place. Later that afternoon, I pulled down the old cedar box from the top shelf of my closet. Derek's box, the one he'd left me with instructions. Open only when it's time. I'd always thought that meant his death, but now I understood. Inside was a worn leather wallet, 2 silver cufflinks, and a folded sheet of yellowed stationery. His handwriting, strong, slanted. Elsie, if you're reading this, It means you've reached the moment where you have to fight, and I'm not there to swing for you. But you've never needed a shield. You are one. Do what's necessary. Don't wait for permission. Our life was good because you built it. Brick by brick. Don't let anyone take it from you now. I love you. D. I read it 3 times before folding it back. Hazel found me an hour later sitting in the living room, holding the cufflinks in my palm. Everything okay? Yes, I said. Your grandfather just gave me his blessing. She smiled and sat beside me. No questions, just presence. That evening, I opened a new email account, one only Hazel knew about. I forwarded copies of every legal document, every scanned receipt, every photo of Doug's backyard plans, and Marla's direct contact. Then I wrote a single-line message. If anything happens to me, this is where the truth lives. And I sent it to myself. Twice. Jean returned 2 days later. No binder this time. No makeup. No husband. Just a paper bag in one hand and a strange look on her face, like someone who wasn't sure if they were visiting a grave or asking to come home. Hazel opened the door, stood blocking the entry. She wants to see you, she said over her shoulder. I was in the dining room, folding laundry again. Same chair, same quiet. Let her in, I said. Jean stepped in slowly, looked around like she didn't recognize the place anymore. Maybe she didn't. It wasn't hers now. It never truly was. She set the paper bag down on the table. It's banana bread, from that bakery you used to like. Thank you. I didn't offer her a seat. She didn't ask. I know I've made things worse, she said finally. You've made them clear. I thought I was helping. No, I said. You thought you were fixing me. But I wasn't broken. Just older. Her eyes dropped. You've always been stubborn. I've always had to be. She didn't argue. For the first time in months, maybe years, she looked like the girl I once held in my lap after her first heartbreak. Not angry, not manipulative. Just tired. I wanted the house, she said quietly. That's the truth. I wanted to feel like something in this family was mine. It could have been, I said, if you'd chosen love over control. She looked up. Her eyes were red. And now? Now it belongs to someone who never once tried to take it. We stood in silence. Then she pulled out an envelope and slid it across the table. What's this? Everything I took, she said. From the accounts. I sold my car, took a second job. It's not all back yet, but it's something. I opened the envelope. Checks, a bank draft, receipts. Her handwriting, messy but real. I didn't come for forgiveness, she added. I just didn't want Hazel to think I left with nothing but entitlement. I nodded. She'll see this, and she'll remember it. Jean turned to go, then paused. Do you hate me? No, I said. But I'm done being small, so you can feel tall. She nodded once, left without another word. When the door closed, Hazel came in and looked at the envelope. She gave it back? Most of it. What are you going to do with it? I looked at her. Bake banana bread. We both laughed. Quiet, but real. Doug showed up 3 days after Jean. No warning, no banana bread. Just a knock on the door, heavy and sharp. Hazel and I were in the backyard, cutting back the marigolds. The sun was low, but the air still held its weight. I didn't look at the door. Hazel did. She stood first. Want me to handle it? No, I said, wiping my hands on a towel. He's not worth your voice. I walked to the door slowly, opened it without a word. Doug stood there, arms crossed, in one of those stiff collared shirts he wore when he was trying to appear more important than he was. His jaw moved first, grinding before his mouth opened. "We need to talk," he said. "Not here." "It's still my family." "Not anymore." He didn't flinch, just looked over my shoulder, scanning the living room. "I heard Jean was here." "She was." "And?" "And she left like a grown woman." His eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" "That you're the one who taught her how to take, not how to stop." He stepped closer. "You think this is over?" "No," I said. "I think you lost." He exhaled, sharp. "You've got Hazel wrapped around your finger, but she'll get tired of it. Eventually, she'll want her own life. She already has it. This house isn't a prison, Doug. It only felt like one when you lived here." His voice dropped lower, meaner. "You know how easy it would be to undo all of this? One hearing, one judge who thinks you're fragile. Try it," I said. "Every file you doctored, every bank statement, every unauthorized transaction. It's all documented. My lawyer has it. My banker has it. Hell, even the sheriff has pie from the day you failed to scare me." He blinked. "You think I'm scared of court?" I said. "I've survived war, childbirth, a heart attack, a stroke, and 30 years of marriage. You're just a man who thought I'd sit quietly while he emptied my pockets." Doug shifted his weight. "Jean still has rights." "No," I said. "She had access. She lost that." He reached into his coat and pulled out a small envelope. I didn't touch it. "What's this?" "A letter," he said. "From her. I don't know what's in it." "Then why carry it?" "Because I told her I'd try one last time." I nodded. "Leave it on the porch." He hesitated, then set it down on the railing. "You used to like me," he said. "No," I said. "I used to doubt myself." He opened his mouth again, but I closed the door. Didn't slam it. Just closed it. Soft. Final. When I turned back, Hazel was standing near the kitchen, arms folded, eyes dark. What did he want? To remind me who he thought I was. We didn't open the letter right away. We sat on the couch, drank tea, and watched the sun drop behind the trees. There was a silence between us, but it wasn't empty. Later, I took the letter out to the porch, opened it in the dark. Inside was one sentence, written in Jean's narrow, slanted hand. "I didn't know how to love you without owning you. No apology, no plea. Just that." I folded the letter and set it beside me. Hazel came out a few minutes later, blanket over her shoulders. "Everything all right?" "Yes," I said. She finally told the truth. "What did she say?" I handed her the paper. She read it, then gave it back. "You believe her?" "I believe she meant it." "And that's enough?" "No," I said. "But it's a start." We sat there a long time, two shadows on the porch, wrapped in stillness. The wind moved through the trees like a whisper, not warning, not regret. Just presence. In the distance, the sound of a trash truck. Doug's final visit had left nothing I needed to keep. The shed door creaked when I opened it. Same way it always had. Same way Derek had left it. Hazel was inside already, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a small pile of photos around her. Old ones, curled at the corners, faded in the way that made memory feel softer, not dimmer. "Found the box," she said, holding up the battered shoebox we'd both seen 1,000 times on the top shelf. Inside, birthday cards, a few ticket stubs, my first driver's license, and a black and white photo of me in front of this same shed holding baby Jean on my hip. I took it from her, held it close. She was always so hard to hold, I said. Hazel looked up. What do you mean? Never melted into you, even as a baby. She never let herself go heavy. Some children do. They rest their whole weight in your arms, like they trust you to carry it. Jean never did. Not once. Hazel didn't say anything, just kept sorting through the pictures, like she understood too well what I meant. We spent the next hour cleaning the shed, not out of necessity, but out of ritual. Dusting, organizing, reclaiming. By noon, the air was warm. We left the door open, let the breeze move through. Hazel found Derek's old toolbox and brought it to the center of the room. You want to keep this here? Yes, I said. Where it belongs. She brushed off the lid, fingers gentle. You ever think about selling the house? I looked at her. I think about staying. I think about dying here. I think about being buried in the dirt I planted. But I don't think about leaving. She nodded. I figured. Just wanted to hear it out loud. I'm old, I said, but I'm still planted. Back inside, we made sandwiches and ate them standing up, like we used to when Hazel was little. The counter too high for her, the time too short for a full sit-down. I have to go back next week, she said finally. Just for a bit. Work's piling up. I knew it was coming. Still, my heart twisted. How long? Maybe 2 weeks, but I'll be back. You don't have to promise that. I want to, she said. This house feels like the first place I've breathed in months. I touched her arm. Come when you want. Leave when you must. But don't ever forget it's yours too. That night, we walked the perimeter of the yard, barefoot on dry grass. The moon was full. The tomatoes were giving up for the season, but the lavender still held on. Hazel asked, Do you forgive her? I thought for a long moment. I forgive what's human in her. I do not forgive the rehearsed parts, the manipulation, the silence she used as punishment. Do you think she loves you? Yes, I said. But love isn't always a good thing. Not when it's used like a leash. Hazel nodded, and we kept walking. I thought about Derek then, how he never tried to outtalk me, only ever tried to understand. He used to say, You don't fix a woman like you, Elsie. You just build enough silence around her so she can hear herself. I missed that silence, but I'd finally found my way back to it. After Hazel went to bed, I sat alone on the porch and lit a candle. No ceremony, just warmth. Just space. I whispered one sentence to the dark. I am still here. The flame didn't flicker. The morning after Hazel left, the house felt too quiet. Not dangerous quiet, not watchful like before. Just real. Honest. No footsteps to anticipate, no slammed drawers, no low muttering in the next room. Just the hum of the fridge, the tick of the old kitchen clock, and the breath of walls that had finally relaxed. I made tea the way I liked it, left the dishes in the sink, sat by the window and watched the street. A woman walked past with a stroller, her phone tucked between chin and shoulder. A man in a yellow vest fixed something near the lamppost. Across the street, Mrs. Dalton watered her hydrangeas in slippers. The world moved on, and I was still here. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't need to. What I felt was cleaner than that, a kind of rightful place in my own life, a sense that I didn't owe anyone my fear anymore. At noon, I checked the mailbox. No threats, no letters, just a coupon flyer and a card. It was from Hazel, simple handwriting. Made it home. Can't stop thinking about the lavender. Love you. H. I tucked it into the corner of the mirror in the hallway, not for decoration, just to see it as I passed. That evening, I walked the house slowly, room by room, stopped in the den, straightened a pillow, stopped in the bedroom, smoothed the bedspread, stopped in the shed, turned the light off, closed the door with a steady hand. Then I sat in the kitchen, in the chair that creaked a little when you leaned back, and I opened the notebook I'd been keeping. No one knew about it yet, not even Hazel. Inside were the names of women I'd met, or heard of, at the senior center, at church, on the bus. Women who'd said things like, "I don't want to bother my son," or "My daughter says I'm confused," or "They handle all my papers now." I wrote their names down, one by one. Next to each name, a note. Still drives, still sharp, house in her name. Used to be a teacher, doesn't remember signing power of attorney. Granddaughter is kind, son is not. They weren't cases. They weren't victims. They were women like me, and I was going to help them. I didn't know what it would look like yet. Maybe meetings, maybe a booklet, maybe just a hand to hold while they called their banks. But it would be something. Because I'd seen how easy it was to disappear without ever leaving your house, and I refused to be the last one pulled back into the light. Before bed, I opened my email. A message from Marla. Just the subject line. Confirmed, all assets secure. Case closed. I smiled, closed the laptop. In the dark, I climbed into bed and let my body sink. Not from exhaustion, from relief, from presence. And before I closed my eyes, I whispered it again. I am still here. Still mine. Still whole. Still watching the door, but now from the inside. If you know someone who's being silenced in their own home, a mother, a grandmother, a woman who seems quieter than she used to be, don't assume she's fading. Ask. Listen. Trust her when she says something feels wrong. And if this story reminds you of something you've lived through, or are still living through, know this. You are not alone. You are not imagining it. And it is not too late. Share this. Leave a comment. Tell your story. Let someone else know they're not the only one who woke up one morning and said, "Enough.